Armin had always been a quiet young man who enjoyed simple things. He was not the kind of person who searched for excitement or great adventures. His life was peaceful, almost predictable, and he often liked it that way. But there was one thing that always drew him out of his routine, the night sky. He loved to climb the hill just outside of town where the lights of the city could not reach. Up there, the stars looked brighter, and the world felt larger. Every evening after work, if the sky was clear, he carried a small blanket, a notebook, and sometimes a cup of tea to that hill, where he would lie down and watch the stars until his eyes grew heavy. On one particular night, the air was cool and crisp, and the silence was comforting. The sky stretched above him, painted with countless tiny lights. He felt the familiar peace settle in his heart as he traced constellations with his finger. But then something unusual caught his attention. At first he thought it was just another airplane flying across the sky. A faint glow appeared on the horizon, brighter than a star but not steady like one. Instead it moved in a pattern, darting left, pausing, then shooting straight up, far quicker than anything he had seen before. Armin sat up, his heart thumping. He rubbed his eyes, thinking maybe he was too tired and imagining things. But when he opened them again, the light was still there, now closer, moving like no human aircraft could. It twisted and turned in sharp angles, then hovered completely still in the sky. A shiver ran through him. He whispered to himself, "That's not a plane. And it's not a satellite either." The glow grew brighter as it descended, slowly. At first, then faster until it stopped above the hill where he sat. His instincts told him to run, but something inside him held him in place. His feet felt rooted to the ground as he stared upward, breathless. Suddenly, with a burst of light, the glow vanished. Armin shielded his eyes, blinking rapidly, and when his vision cleared, he saw someone standing a short distance away. At first, he thought it was a girl from town. She stood tall and graceful, her hair flowing in the breeze. But as his eyes adjusted, he realized she was not like anyone he had ever seen before. Her skin seemed to shimmer faintly, as though the moonlight itself clung to her. Her eyes glowed softly, not with reflection but with their own light, deep and endless like galaxies. She wore something that looked like a suit made of smooth silver fabric, hugging her shape but flowing like liquid when she moved. Armin's breath caught in his throat. His first thought was that he was dreaming. His second was that he was in danger. But strangely, he did not feel afraid. The girl's presence radiated calmness, and though her appearance was strange, there was something gentle about the way she looked at him. She tilted her head slightly, observing him with curiosity, as though he were the unusual one. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but carried an echo, like many notes speaking together. The words were not perfect, broken, but still understandable. "You are human?" she asked, as if she was confirming a detail she already knew. Armin's throat felt dry, but he managed to nod. "Yes. Who are you?" She stepped closer, her movements graceful, almost like she was floating. "Lyra," she said, placing her hand on her chest. Lyra." He blinked. The name was strange, yet beautiful. "Lyra," he repeated slowly, testing the sound. You're not from here, are you?" She smiled faintly, and the glow in her eyes seemed to brighten. "Not from here." She lifted her gaze to the stars above them, then back to him. Armin's mind raced. Everything he had ever read about science fiction, all those wild stories of visitors from other worlds now stood in front of him in flesh and light. Yet this was no story. He could feel the cool night air, the weight of the moment pressing on his chest, the way her eyes met his with strange kindness. For a moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the rustle of the wind through the grass. Armin wanted to ask 100 questions. Why was she here? What did she want? Was she dangerous? But none of those words left his lips. Instead, what he asked was far simpler. "Why me?" Lyra blinked, her expression almost amused, though soft. "Not you." This place. She gestured around, to the hill, to the town lights in the distance. Then she touched her chest again and added, observe, learn. So she was here to watch, not to harm. Relief washed through Armin, but his curiosity only deepened. Something about the way she spoke, broken words yet filled with intent, made him want to listen more. He laughed nervously, scratching the back of his neck. Well, I don't know how interesting this place is. It's just a small town, a quiet life. Her eyes softened again and she tilted her head. Quiet life. She repeated his words like they were precious. Armand found himself smiling despite the strangeness of it all. There was no fear now, only wonder. He did not know why, but he felt as if their meeting was not an accident. The stars above them seemed brighter, and the night carried a weight of mystery it had never held before. As the moments passed, he realized something else. The girl, Lyra, was not just curious about Earth. She was curious about him. The way her glowing eyes followed his smallest movements, the way she repeated his words as if trying to understand the meaning behind them, made him feel as though he was the first human she had truly chosen to speak with. And in that realization, Armin's ordinary life, once quiet and predictable, took its first step into something extraordinary. The days that followed felt unreal for Armin. He kept thinking that maybe he had imagined everything on that hill, that perhaps the strange, glowing girl was only a dream. But then, the next evening, as he climbed back up to the same spot, he saw her again. Lyra was waiting, sitting quietly on the grass as though she had always belonged there. The sight of her made his breath catch and all doubts vanished. She was real. When she noticed him, she stood up gracefully. Her silver-like outfit shimmered under the moonlight, and her glowing eyes focused on him with calm warmth. It amazed Armin how quickly the fear inside him had disappeared. He did not feel threatened anymore. Instead, he felt drawn to her, like a moth to a flame. Their conversations were slow, but every word mattered. Lyra's knowledge of Earth language was limited, yet she listened carefully to everything Armin said. Sometimes she would repeat his words, almost tasting them, as if the meaning carried weight beyond sound. At first, their exchanges were simple, names of things around them: tree, sky, wind, star. Armin pointed and spoke, and she repeated, her voice gentle but deliberate. Slowly, their talks grew longer, and though broken, they began to understand each other. Armin learned that she came from a distant star system he could not even imagine reaching. She described her world not in exact words, but in feelings and images. She told him her people lived where light from two suns touched oceans of silver. She spoke of cities that glowed like fireflies in the dark, and of skies filled with colors his eyes had never seen. He listened with awe, imagining every detail. But what fascinated him most was not her descriptions of faraway places. It was how she looked at Earth with such curiosity. She wanted to know everything: how humans built houses, why they painted pictures, why they laughed at jokes. She asked questions in her simple language, and Armin tried his best to answer. Sometimes he struggled to explain ordinary things that seemed obvious to him but strange to her. Why do people sing? Why do they tell stories about love? Why do they cry when they are happy? One evening, Armin shared a small box of food with her. It was nothing fancy, just bread and fruit, but Lyra examined it like a treasure. She sniffed the bread, touched its texture, and then took a small bite. Her eyes widened in surprise at the taste, and Armin laughed at her expression. He had never thought of bread as something exciting, yet to her it was completely new. She then picked up a piece of fruit, holding it carefully before tasting it. The way she looked at something so ordinary made Armin see it differently too. In return, she showed him something from her world. From a hidden pocket in her suit, she pulled out a small crystal that pulsed with soft light. When she held it between her palms, it released a sound. Not quite music, not quite a voice, but something in between. It was a soothing vibration, like the hum of the universe itself. Armin felt it deep inside his chest, calming his heart. She smiled at his reaction, as though pleased that he could feel it too. As days turned into weeks, they continued to meet under the stars. Their connection grew stronger with every meeting. Armin shared stories from his childhood, about the time he climbed a tree and fell, about how he once tried to ride a bicycle and crashed into a fence, about how he and his friends laughed so hard they cried. Lyra listened with fascination, and sometimes she laughed too, though her laugh was soft and unusual, like bells ringing far away. She told him something that surprised him greatly. Her people did not laugh often. They lived with discipline, valuing order and harmony. Emotions, she said, were seen as powerful but dangerous. Too much sadness or too much joy could disturb their balance. That was why laughter, true laughter, was rare and precious to them. When Armin laughed, she watched him closely, as if trying to memorize the feeling behind it. One evening, as they sat together watching the stars, Lyra turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "You different," she said slowly, searching for the right words. "You make light inside." Armin chuckled, though her words made him strangely emotional. "Light inside? I don't know about that, I'm just an ordinary man." She shook her head firmly. "Not ordinary. You kind. You give." Her eyes glowed brighter as she said it, and Armin felt warmth spread in his chest. He realized then that she was not just curious about Earth. She was curious about him. That night their talk stretched longer than usual. Armin was joking about how simple his life was compared to hers. "If you like Earth this much, you should just stay here," he teased with a grin. Then, without thinking, he added, "Marry me then, if you like it so much." It was only a joke. He expected her to frown in confusion or maybe laugh softly, repeating the word without meaning. But instead, Lyra grew very still. She looked at him, her glowing eyes studying his face deeply. Then, slowly, a small smile curved her lips. Armin's laughter faded when he saw her expression. For the first time, he felt a strange tension between them. She leaned closer, her voice calm but serious as she repeated his words carefully. "Marry me then." Armin blinked, unsure if she was teasing back, or if she had truly taken his words seriously. He swallowed hard, suddenly breathless under her gaze. Her next words, spoken with quiet certainty, left his heart racing. "If you mean I accept." The world seemed to stop around them, the stars above, the cool wind, the silence of the hill. Everything faded except her eyes and those words. Armin had joked, but Lyra had answered with a promise that carried weight far beyond what he had intended. And in that moment, he realized their bond had crossed a line he had never expected. Armin could not believe what he had just heard. For him, the words "marry me then" had been nothing more than a light joke, the kind of thing people say when they want to tease or make someone laugh. But Lyra's response was not laughter. Her eyes glowed brighter than before, and her voice carried a seriousness that made his chest tighten. She had said, "I accept, but only if you mean it with all your heart." Armin's first instinct was to laugh again, to explain that he had only been joking. Yet when he looked at her, he saw no trace of misunderstanding. Lyra was not confused. She understood exactly what the words meant, though in her world, they carried far more weight. He swallowed hard, his palms sweaty. "Wait, Lyra," he said, carefully trying to find the right words. "I was only joking, I didn't mean it, not like that." She tilted her head, studying him with her calm, unblinking gaze. "Not mean?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with curiosity. Armin rubbed the back of his neck nervously. "On Earth, sometimes people say things as a joke. It doesn't always mean forever. When I said marry me, I didn't mean it seriously." For a long moment, Lyra was silent. The glow in her eyes dimmed a little, as if she was thinking. Finally, she spoke, slowly and with care. "In my world, words, heavy. Marriage, not joke. It is vow. Two souls, one path." She touched her chest lightly, then gestured toward him. When you said I listen, I believe. Her explanation made Armin's heart pound. To her, his joke had been a declaration, a vow stronger than any promise. He felt a pang of guilt. She had trusted his words, and he had spoken them carelessly. I didn't mean to trick you, he said softly. I didn't know it would mean so much to you. Lyra's gaze softened again. I know. You, not lie, but you, speak without knowing weight. She paused, then leaned closer. Still, I ask, do you want this, with heart? Armin could barely breathe. The seriousness in her voice made the air around them feel heavier. 100 thoughts raced through his mind. She was not human. She came from a world far away, a life he could not even imagine. Yet here she was, asking him if he meant the words that had slipped from his mouth in a moment of playfulness. He wanted to say no, to step back, to laugh it off. That would have been easier. But something inside him stopped him. He looked into her glowing eyes, and for the first time he felt the depth of their bond. This was not just curiosity or friendship anymore. Somehow, in the quiet nights they had spent together, she had become important to him. He lowered his eyes to the ground, struggling to find his answer. It's not that I don't care, he said quietly. It's just, on Earth, marriage is something serious too. People don't usually say it unless they're ready for a lifetime together. And you and I, we're from different worlds. Lyra listened carefully, her expression calm. Then she spoke with gentle firmness. Different worlds. But hearts? Same. I feel bond. Strong. She placed her hand lightly against her chest. Again. When you laugh, I feel. When you speak, I learn. When you look, I see truth. Her words struck him deeply. She was not simply repeating phrases. She truly felt what she was saying. She had seen something in him that he had never considered in himself. Armin let out a shaky laugh. You make it sound like I'm someone special. She nodded slowly, her gaze steady. You are. The simplicity of her answer left him speechless. No one had ever said it to him like that. Clear, direct, and without hesitation. For a moment he forgot the impossibility of their situation. He forgot that she came from a distant star, that her people might not even allow her to stay. All he felt was the weight of her words and the sincerity in her eyes. Finally, he whispered, Lyra, I don't know if I can promise what you're asking, but I do know I don't want this to end. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Then, maybe not joke, maybe truth. The stars above seemed to shine brighter in that moment, as if the universe itself had paused to listen. After that night, things between them changed. Their conversations were no longer just about learning words or sharing stories. There was a new closeness, an invisible thread pulling them together. Armin found himself thinking about her during the day, wondering when he would see her again. At night, when they met, he felt his heart beating faster whenever she looked at him. One evening, he asked her more about her people's vows. So, when someone marries on your world, what happens? Do they have a ceremony like humans? Lyra shook her head slowly. Not ceremony, not many people. Only two. They speak vow, with heart. Once spoken, cannot break. It is forever, forever, Armin repeated, the word heavy on his tongue. That's a big promise. Yes, she agreed. Then she looked at him with quiet intensity. But big promise makes big bond. Stronger than stars. Armin stared at her, unable to respond. He had always thought of marriage as something complicated. Paperwork, ceremonies, family expectations. But for Lyra, it was simple. A vow between two souls, spoken once and held forever. That night, as they sat side by side under the wide sky, Armin realized he was standing at a crossroads he had never expected. He could step back, keep things simple, and let her leave when her time on Earth was over. Or he could step forward, take her words seriously, and accept the weight of what she offered. The thought made him nervous, but also strangely alive. His quiet, ordinary life had turned into something extraordinary, and all because of her. As the wind brushed gently through the grass, Lyra turned her glowing eyes toward him again. "Armin," she said softly, her voice carrying the echo of the stars. "Do you choose?" He did not answer that night. His heart was too full, his mind too tangled. But deep inside, he knew that the choice was coming, and it would change everything. The nights of laughter and quiet conversations slowly turned into something heavier. Armin began to notice a change in Lyra's expression. She was still gentle, still curious, but sometimes her eyes looked distant, as if she was listening to something far away. One evening, when they sat together on the hill, she seemed restless. Her fingers traced patterns in the grass, and her gaze shifted often toward the sky. Armand asked softly, "Lyra, is something wrong?" She hesitated before answering. "Time short, my people, call." The words hit him like a stone. He had known deep down that this could not last forever. She did not belong here. She was not a visitor from another city or country. She was from another world. Sooner or later, she would have to return. But hearing her say it out loud made his chest ache. "How soon?" he asked, his voice low. Lyra looked at him with sadness. "Soon. Days. Maybe less." Armin's heart pounded. He wanted to argue, to ask her to stay, but he didn't know if that was even possible. "Do you want to go back?" he asked carefully. She shook her head slowly. "I not want, but duty. Strong. They wait. If I stay, they call me traitor." The word traitor stung his ears. He could imagine how her people might see it. She was sent to observe, not to fall in love with a human. Yet here she was, caught between duty and her own feelings. Armin clenched his fists. "What if you stayed anyway? What if you chose for yourself?" Lyra's glowing eyes softened. "I choose, but choice has cost. You, in danger. If they think you trap me, they hurt you. I cannot allow." Her words made his stomach twist. The thought of facing beings from another world who could harm him was terrifying. Yet what terrified him more was losing her. That night, they sat in silence, longer than usual. The stars above seemed both beautiful and cruel, watching their struggle. Finally, Armin spoke. "You said before that when your people marry, it's forever, right? A vow that cannot be broken?" "Yes," she whispered. "Then if you already accepted my words," he said carefully, "doesn't that give you a reason to stay?" Lyra looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Yes, bond, reason. But reason must be strong enough. They may test. They may ask if human can hold vow." Armin's heart thudded. He had never been tested like that before. He was just an ordinary man living in a small town with an ordinary life. How could he prove himself to an entire world? Yet when he looked at her, he knew he had to try. The following nights felt heavier, as though each moment was borrowed. They spent more time together, walking under the moon, sharing little things as if to hold on to every second. Lyra showed him how she could sense emotions as energy, describing how his laughter felt like warmth and his sadness felt like shadows. Armin shared his hopes and fears, confessing how he never thought he was meant for anything beyond a quiet life, yet meeting her had changed that. On their last night before her recall, Lyra sat close to him. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "they come. Ship will land. I must answer." Armin's chest tightened. "And if you choose me?" Her eyes glowed faintly, and she reached out, placing her hand lightly over his. "Then I stay. But danger follows. Are you ready?" He looked at her, and for once he did not hesitate. "If it means being with you, then yes, I'm ready." Lyra's lips curved into the softest smile, but her eyes shimmered with sorrow and hope mixed together. The night air grew colder, and the silence stretched between them, filled with the words they could not say. Armin realized that by tomorrow everything would change one way or another. The next day, the sky above the hill was not like any other. Armin stood there, his heart racing as a strange hum filled the air. The sound grew louder, vibrating through the ground beneath his feet. Then, with a burst of light, a ship appeared, above the hill. It was vast, silver and smooth, glowing faintly like Lyra's suit. It descended silently, landing with an otherworldly grace. Armin's legs trembled, but he stood firm. He had promised her he was ready. A door opened in the ship, and figures emerged. They were tall, like Lyra, their eyes glowing with the same otherworldly light. Their presence was commanding, their steps measured. They looked at Armin, then at Lyra. The air grew heavy with tension. One of them spoke, their voice echoing like hers but stronger, more commanding. Lyra, you were sent to observe. Why do you delay return? Lyra stepped forward, her back straight, her voice steady. I choose. I stay. With him. She pointed gently toward Armin. The other beings murmured among themselves, their glowing eyes flickering. The leader's gaze sharpened. With human? This is against command, explain. Lyra's voice did not shake. Bond formed. Marriage vow. Cannot break. Forever. The word echoed through the air and the beings grew silent. Their eyes turned toward Armin as though measuring him. He felt the weight of their gaze pressing on him, testing his resolve. His mouth went dry, but he stepped forward. I may not be from your world, he said, his voice trembling at first but growing stronger. But I meant what I said. If she accepts me, then I'll stand by her. I'll keep the vow. For a long, tense moment, no one spoke. The hum of the ship filled the silence. Then the leader looked at Lyra and finally nodded. If vow is true, then bridge is made. Human and our kind. Linked. Armin let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Relief washed through him, but so did awe. Somehow, his simple words had been accepted as something greater than himself. The beings turned back toward the ship, and with a final glance at Lyra, they entered and rose into the sky, disappearing among the clouds. The hill grew quiet again, the night sky stretching wide above them. Armin turned to Lyra, still struggling to believe what had just happened. They allowed it? Just like that? Lyra smiled softly. Not just like that. They see truth. You speak with heart. Armin laughed weakly, still catching his breath. I don't know how I did that. I was terrified. She touched his hand gently. Courage is not no fear. Courage is heart-choosing even when afraid. Her words sank deep into him. He realized then that this was not just about him or her. It was about the bond they had formed, something strong enough to bridge two worlds. They stood together on the hill, watching the stars. For the first time, Armin did not feel small beneath the endless sky. He felt connected, to Lyra, to the universe, to something greater than himself. And as they walked down the hill side by side, he understood that his life would never be ordinary again. He had spoken a joke, but it had turned into a vow that had changed his future, and perhaps even the path of two worlds.